Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
We welcome you to a podcast Onstage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika Goswami and I'm the managing editor of Media's 6 technology B2B enterprise platforms. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts, and they reach over 1.3 million businesses and their leaders worldwide. Today, we're speaking to one such business leader who is going to share his expertise and knowledge with us. It's Andrew Hollister. He's the Chief Information Security Officer of Logarithm. Welcome to our show, Andrew. It's great to have you here with us. I'm so grateful you could make time for this interaction.
Thanks, Kanika. It's great to be here.
A little bit about Andrew. He's a versatile contributor with more than 20 years of experience in cybersecurity. Over the past 10 years, he has excelled in both individual and leadership roles in professional service, sales engineering, product research, and Office of the CISO. Andrew has also worked extensively across the businesses with marketing, sales, product, and engineering. Something a little bit about Logarithm from you, Andrew. I think you're the right person to talk about it.
Absolutely. So Logarithm, we're a security intelligence company. So we offer a SIM platform which gives organizations visibility into what's happening in their environment, be that from a compliance perspective, from an operational risk perspective, or indeed from a threat perspective.
So we start with the first question or pointer, as I like to call it. What are the latest trends that are causing organizations to evolve their cybersecurity strategies?
Sure, and this is, of course, a perpetually interesting question. And Logarithm actually have just recently surveyed our customer base, asking this question and a number of related ones in our State of the Security Team report. And I think what we found from that report and what we see otherwise is there's perhaps kind of 3 major trends that are causing organizations to look at their security strategy and also to evolve it, as you say. And that's really across regulatory changes, new attack types, and AI actually. So I'll perhaps talk a little bit to each of those 3 and some of the factors that we see there. And AI is of course the buzzword at the moment. You almost can't talk about cybersecurity without talking about AI as well. And I think we really see these kind of 3 elements, right? You've got the security of AI itself. You've got security from AI, i.e. threat actors are using AI, and you've got security by AI vis-a-vis products that are actually leveraging various types of AI to deliver their service. And ultimately, I guess what we're most interested in here is security from AI, and there's been a few interesting reports around this. Whilst defenders are kind of quite concerned about the threat from AI, I think we're predominantly seeing it being leveraged in connection with phishing, improving phishing attacks, and trying to make them more believable. And there's a lot of scope for other areas, but at least the research that I've seen up to now indicates that at this point, the defenders are probably ahead of the attackers in terms of their leveraging of that technology. Kind of side by side with that, we're seeing masses of changes in the kind of regulatory environment. Just to call out a few, you've got NIS2 coming up. The deadline for that is in October this year. You've got DORA, the Digital Operational Resiliency Act, those 2 both on the EU side. Of course, that's also the deadline is coming up for that. And then on the US side, where we've got the SEC cybersecurity reporting and literally dozens of others around the world. And I was in fact in a session recently where one of the presenters said they're tracking multiple or numbers of changes to the regulatory and compliance environment on a day-to-day basis, which I'd known there was a lot of changes. I didn't realize it was quite at that scale. And as organizations try to grapple, particularly if they are working on a global basis, as organizations try to grapple with all of those compliance requirements, it really is driving them to evolve their strategy in order to help them meet those compliance objectives. And I guess the third area here is kind of new attack types. And I'm always a little bit kind of on the fence about whether anything's really new, right? Our former CISO used to say, what's new is new and what's old is new. And we do see that a bit when it concerns cybersecurity and attack types. And I think the old thing that we're seeing is new right now is particularly kind of living off the land type attacks. So threat actors, certainly the more advanced ones, are beginning to look much more to how do I leverage the existing tooling that sits on the Windows endpoint or within the Linux deployment and so on, and leverage those existing tools to achieve their ultimate goals, rather than going down the route of trying to develop their own malware and all the testing and the kind of back and forth battle with EDR and detection and so on and so forth. So we are seeing threat actors tend to go in that way. And I think kind of between these kind of three major areas that we and our survey respondents at least are seeing, those are the areas that are really driving organizations to evolve their cyber strategies today.
Right. Also, data breaches are becoming more deadly and more expensive, of course. So in addition to the current tools and policies that you adopted and you follow, what extra efforts can CISOs put in to stay a little more safer, probably? Because there is no such thing as 100% security.
Yeah.
A little more safer is the best we can expect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, do you know, I think this is a really, really important point. There is nothing such as 100% security. And organizations can perhaps strive for that and maybe buy a bit into the marketing hype. You know, you buy this technology and you will be secure. But a cybersecurity is ultimately it's a journey. It's a effort of reducing risk as it's appropriate to the resources that I'm trying to protect. And I think as CISOs and other security leaders and business leaders think about this, it is really important that it's that the focus is how do I reduce the risk of experiencing a damaging data breach, rather than having this kind of binary mindset. You know, yesterday I was insecure, today I'm secure. That isn't really the way it is. And I think a little bit to that point, I think it can be very tempting to go down the route of the latest technology, adding more technology. The various reports indicate that the average medium-sized enterprise might have upwards of 30 and perhaps as many as 50 cybersecurity tools in place. So, you know, it's perhaps this thing more isn't necessarily better, and we perhaps quickly jump to we need another solution, we need another tool, we'll add something else into the mix. But I think this is really about focusing in on the problem that you're trying to solve, and thinking about what are the specific risks as we look across the threat landscape, as we look at the data breaches that are happening. What are the specific risks in my environment, and what is it that I'm really trying to protect? And ultimately, you know, the IP behind my product is very, very valuable to me. You know, the lunch menu for next week is probably not so important to protect. So I think it's very important that cybersecurity leaders think about what is it that I'm really trying to solve here. What's the biggest problem that I have? And, you know, kind of thinking about across the tooling in particular, I think this visibility is really, really an important key. And you can deploy all kinds of preventative tools, but if you don't have visibility into what's really going on within your environment, for example, let's say you've still got some on-prem environment and a threat actor comes through the firewall, what visibility have you got of that threat actor once they're within your environment? Or indeed that they've broken into your cloud environment and are moving around there. So I think one of the big areas of focus really should be what visibility do I have into my assets, into the activity that's going on within that environment that I'm trying to protect. And, ultimately, you can't protect what you don't see. And getting that level of visibility is, I think, really critical to a successful cybersecurity program.
Okay. That really makes sense. One kind of, some people have called it controversial, but I still ask you, AI cuts both ways. Do you feel it can play a very positive role in better security? Because it certainly plays a very strong role in better attacks, if I can put it like that. So, how do you see
Yeah,
it coming up?
this is really the topic of the moment, I guess. And of course, AI is a very, very broad umbrella, right? It covers a wide variety of things. You've got things like machine learning, you've got deep learning, you've got natural language processing, and other areas besides. And cybersecurity has been leveraging AI in various means for certainly in the form of ML for a very long time already, and I think that's certainly given additional insights and visibility. You think of things like UEBA or NDR technologies like that. They've leveraged machine learning for many years, if not more than a decade in some cases. So I think AI as a general level technology certainly has already played a significantly beneficial role in cybersecurity, and I guess really the piece of interest to everybody today is, will generative AI take that to the next level? And we've seen this kind of incredible growth in the capabilities and the scope of what LLMs and those technologies can deliver for us. But, I think we are very, very early in the development of generative AI. And of course, there's the usual rush of vendors to kind of tag on the latest buzzword to the technology in cybersecurity and elsewhere, of course. But I think probably a couple of things around this. When we think about kind of TDIR, so threat detection, investigation, and response, what we really need to think about is, can generative AI give us meaningful improvements as it relates to our TDIR activities vis-a-vis the core functions of the SOC? And, probably what we've seen in the industry so far is various variations on kind of chatbots and that kind of thing, which are perhaps a little bit outside of the analyst's normal workflow. But I think as we develop our understanding of this space and there's more innovation, I think there's a lot of opportunity. We talk a lot in the industry about SOC analyst burnout, right? And all the repetitive tasks that they have to do. And if we can offload some of those tasks, things like report writing, for example, trying to trawl through big, long threat reports and pull out the IOCs and get to a meaningful kind of summary of that intelligence, then I think there are some really good opportunities, particularly for generative AI, to help those guys who are kind of at the sharp end of the SOC, if you like, and dealing with cybersecurity incidents on a day-to-day basis. And I think there can be some assistance there in helping cut through the noise. I guess just pivoting a little bit with that, there is a lot of talk about, I mean, we've been hearing about the autonomous SOC because of automation for years and years and years. I still think it's a bit of a pipe dream. And I still think it's a bit of a pipe dream with generative AI, quite honestly, because ultimately you need a human being in the loop. And generative AI it's a probabilistic technology. You don't necessarily get the same answer every time. And a kind of experienced analyst may well be able to use it to speed up what they're doing. An inexperienced analyst, whilst it may help them to some extent, they won't necessarily be able to differentiate between when Gen AI is giving them the right answer and when Gen AI is perhaps hallucinating, as we say, a little bit. So my perspective is it's very much going to be a co-pilot, and probably most beneficial for those analysts who have a bit of experience in the field already and can actually accelerate what they're doing.
So I think 2 or 3 days ago we got a press release which says that most of the businesses in UK feel that most of their technology processes are going to be taken over by AI. 60% I think was the kind of number they gave. So I'm sorry, it's an impromptu question. It just occurred to me when you said it's still not all there. Gen AI is, as you said, responds differently to different stimuli, and it
Yeah.
does not be, it cannot be trusted to perform like a human being. So do you really see, or do you really think that we're going to lose jobs to a technology that is not fully reliable, or do you think it's going to evolve to reach there?
So the way I kind of look at it is Gen AI is pretty good at tasks. And I read a piece from Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, recently, and he said, people are almost seeing, particularly GPT-4, as it's almost as a person, but he said it's not really good at taking on a role. But can it do many tasks? Absolutely. I think when I think about this in a historical perspective, we had spreadsheets that in Excel and so on and so forth, but they didn't get rid of accountants, but they made them more effective. And if you think about a carpenter, they got power tools at a particular point. It didn't get rid of carpenters. It made them much more efficient, and they could do the work more quickly. And I do see Gen AI, if I can offload, let's say, writing a report to Gen AI, as a summary of an incident that I've been dealing with that's going to be used to report to my board, that's actually a significant time saving to me. Now, I'm probably not just going to press the button and send it off to the board without reviewing it and perhaps tweaking it a little bit. But I think in terms of those individual tasks, it will help human beings to be more efficient and work together with the technology versus seeing it as something that's going to come along and kind of directly replace a human being. So I really, really do see it as a assistant. And all right, does it mean that as we've seen over the course of the past 10, 20, 30 years, as technology's developed, some particular types of job don't exist anymore? Sure, that's the case, but it's also the case that many other jobs that didn't exist before get created by new technology, and I've got no doubt that'll be the same in the case of generative AI. I don't expect us all to retire in the next 5 years and leave it to the machines.
Oh, if anything, it will probably take over larger roles of very manual tasks, which probably more intelligent people can reskill and move to a higher level of skills, or something like that.
Yeah,
It's not the
absolutely.
skilled people that it's ever going to be replacing. It's just repetitive manual kind of work. And
Yeah,
as you very rightly said, there are many jobs that have disappeared over the last 2 or 3 decades. there are many jobs that have disappeared since we started working. Since I started working,
Absolutely.
we don't have data entry people anymore, for instance. And my fear is that very soon writers' jobs will disappear if ChatGPT goes on like that. I don't know where I'm going. But security is a little more critical, so which is why I asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, on a more serious note, will smarter data privacy policies help enterprises stay safer? Do you think? So, we're talking about regulations, policy. We're talking about the GDPR, the CCPA, and whatever else the government wants to regulate to protect. Do you think it's effective and it's going to help in the long run?
Yeah. I mean, I think, thinking about a cybersecurity program for a minute, policy is really fundamental to everything that we do. It kind of gives us the framework for our security program. And I guess at a government level, that's also what governments are trying to do. They're trying to give guidelines and standards for how organizations approach security. So, I kind of think about it with this idea that a rising tide lifts all the ships. And, we can kind of discuss all day long the benefits and virtues of one compliance mandate or one regulation against another. But ultimately, if we can help organizations lift their security programs to a more mature level, that actually helps everyone. And kind of back to your comment about risk earlier, if I've got a mature cybersecurity program, but half of my suppliers have something that's really immature, that actually indicates risk to me. So I think in as much as those policies and compliance frameworks and so on lift everyone, it definitely is a benefit. But, ultimately, it's only going to be as good as the kind of process and the people that actually implement that policy or that regulation. And I think, we have this saying, it's people, process, and technology. It's people, process, and policy in this case. And you can have the best policy in the world, but if people aren't bought into it and they don't follow it, it's not really very much help. And I feel like that's an area where there's probably more progress to be made. That policy really aligns and kind of resonates with what the organization, the business is trying to achieve itself. And at an organizational level, as we think about policy development, really connecting with the people in the organization to connect what the policy is trying to achieve with the business outcomes that the business has got focus on is really key in order to make kind of smart or useful policies.
And my last question, Andrew, do you think that business leaders, this is kind of strategic leadership kind of question. Do you think that all business leaders should take security seriously? Not just the ideal IT leader, not just the CISO, not just the technology leader, but everyone, people who are heading marketing or supply chain or whatever business processes they're handling. Because security should be top of the mind for everybody, you think, or is it just your responsibility?
No, I do. That's a kind of nice setup question. Absolutely, I think it should be everybody's responsibility. I mean, I think so. I mean, certainly when I first came into cybersecurity, it was very much it's IT. It's a subset of IT. It's a technical issue. I think as time's gone on, more and more organizations have realized that's actually not the case. It is de facto a business issue, and but pretty well every business today is a digital business in some form or another. You really can't avoid being a digital business. So to this idea that cybersecurity is just a technical discipline that belongs somewhere in the IT department or or wherever, I don't think is really relevant in the era that we're now in. And, I think many people perhaps focus a bit too much on, what's the reporting lines, where does the cybersecurity leadership sit, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's even so much about that, but I think it's about a recognition from the board level and down that cybersecurity is a business issue, and it's something that should be treated like any other business risk, and addressed as any other business risk. And it's become so significant that ultimately you can't push it off into a corner. And the survey I mentioned we'd just done, the state of the cybersecurity team, I think 78% of those in that survey said that the CEO and or the cybersecurity leader should be responsible for cybersecurity. And I think that's really grown over time, that there's that kind of joint responsibility and joint perspective on it. And, I think the other interesting thing is we are seeing a trend of organizations allocating more resources and cybersecurity teams feeling like, I do have sufficient resources. I do have backup from senior management. And indeed, we saw almost 50% of execs saying they have either a daily or weekly meeting where they cover cybersecurity as a subject. So I think a fairly significant transition has already taken place. I suspect it's somewhat differentiated depending on the industry that you're in, but certainly as this area has matured, and I think we look at cybersecurity more as a risk to be managed, then I think we'll certainly see more and more senior leaders, more and more boards owning that cybersecurity responsibility in a more fulsome way than we've seen before.
So those were the questions I had, Andrew. There's something else that we've missed. Now is when you speak up.
No, I think we've covered a lot of interesting areas here, and we stand at a kind of really exciting point in cybersecurity. I think there's a lot of innovation going on. We're seeing a lot of changes in technology. I think that's the reason why many of us are in this space. We're technologists at heart, and ultimately what we want to do is enable organizations to use technology in with as low a risk as possible attached to it, and that's the thing that kind of keeps the interest going and keeps the focus on cybersecurity as a discipline.
And especially since everything is digital, as you just very rightly mentioned, everything is digital. The risk is everywhere. Even marketing is at risk of cyber attacks.
Absolutely,
all of it. So I have to thank you for your time, Andrew. We asked for 20 minutes. We've shot over 8.5 minutes more, but it was a very enjoyable conversation. A lot of interesting information which you passed along. Thank you so much for today, Andrew.
Great. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.